If you're taking yourself seriously, then you need to invest in yourself in many different ways, right? And one of them is to hire a professional to do whatever it may be for your business so that it looks professional, because then people will know that you're taking yourself seriously, you're taking your business, you're taking your brand seriously.
Hey, Creating Maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create.
Are you ready to get serious? I think it's time to get serious about your personal brand, because if you're going to create something that helps you to build the legacy you want, then it's all about being serious and intentional. And my guest for today's episode is going to help us do that, but in a fun way. Claire Harvey is a personal brand and family photographer with over 25 years behind the lens. However, before becoming a full-time photographer, Claire worked in the financial world for a hedge fund and for two prominent public financial companies, advising executives on how to communicate with investors. We dig into her story of this journey, which is fascinating, and it's going to be just what you need to hear right now. Claire is exceptional at what she does, and if you've been to my website, reframetocreate.com, you've seen her handiwork. All of the photos on there were taken by her, and I had so many amazing shots from that photo shoot with her that I've been using them for years on my LinkedIn posts. In today's episode, we build on my conversation on personal branding with Diane Diaz in episode 64 and talk about what Claire calls the need to have visual assets as part of your personal brand. I asked her the question you're probably asking yourself right now. Okay, what's that? And why does anyone need this as part of their personal brand?
I said to you before, I feel like I say this to everyone, I'm such like a positive person. And so I always try to figure out how to reframe this statement, but I don't understand how you can have a brand this day and age without images or visuals, because you don't necessarily need an extensive website at this point, but you need at least a landing page and you need to show yourself, and you should be on social media. I mean, the first thing I do when I hear about someone is I go look for them on Instagram, LinkedIn, a website or whatever. And that really tells you about a person. That's like the first way a lot of people meet you. And your goal is to build the like, no trust factor with someone so that then they're really drawn in and become a part of your story. They become invested in you. And so if they aren't kind of mesmerized by what they first see, then they're not necessarily likely to follow along. If you're taking yourself seriously, then you need to invest in yourself in many different ways, right? And one of them is to hire a professional to do whatever it may be for your business so that it looks professional, because then people will know that you're taking yourself seriously, you're taking your business, you're taking your brand seriously. And this day and age, photography is very important because it's basically, like I said, one of the first things, your first impression in a lot of ways. And so if someone sees good photography, good visuals, that will keep them on a little bit longer. If they see something that's not professional, I think a lot of times then they're not going to take you seriously and they're not going to really spend much more than a second looking at you.
So what you're saying is really interesting. And I think a lot of people who have businesses can get behind that and can understand that. But a lot of my listeners, maybe they don't have a business. Maybe it's a side hustle. Maybe it's not something that's, that they think is that big of a thing or a deal, or they're still full-time professionals in that world, in that space. And I had, Diane Diaz come on to talk about personal branding, why it's important for professionals. And I'm interested to sort of like get your thoughts on that. Like, is this something that a regular Joe Schmo professional also needs to be investing in? Like, if they're investing in their personal brand, do they also need visual assets? Should they hire a photographer like you, even if, they're just like, yeah, I'm just working my job here. Do I need this?
I think like if you're taking your side hustle, you're taking what you do seriously, then you should invest in whatever. I mean, you invested in a podcast mic. So, whatever whether it's visuals, whether it's a photographer, whether it's specific clothing that you need to look the part, whether it's your side hustle is road racing on bikes, you're going to invest in a good bike. So whatever that's kind of a hobby, but like whatever your side hustle is, there's a point where you have to invest in a tool of some sort. To me, the reason I call images visual assets is because they are assets for your business. They're assets for you. And you can look at it like investing in the stock market or whatever. These visuals should appreciate over time. They gain value through your strategic use of them, and they establish connections. So I believe in a lot of respects unquantifiable in terms of ROI. And now you have to use them. But when you use them, they should give you an immense amount of return on your investment. There are instances where some side hustles may be more like not investing in still images. There's more and more video that's important to invest in. I'm doing more and more video for clients. And if it's something like YouTube videos, I look at the YouTube videos that my kids watch. Again, they're still investing in a ring light, their setup. Like there's certain things depending on what kind of entrepreneur you are that you need to invest in. But any way you look at it, you need imagery to express who you are and what you're doing. I think this is one of the benefits of having a side hustle while you're still at another job, if that's where you are. And I can explain how I started too, but you should take some of the money that you are making at your current job and use that to invest in your side hustle. I think that's one of the really big benefits of having these two jobs. I know for a while, I took everything that I made on the photography side when I was in my corporate job and I saved it so that when I did quit my corporate job, I had a chunk. It went very fast, but I had that chunk that I knew was there.
You're saying so much that I want to get into. That's really exciting. That's really exciting. No. I love it. We're going to get into your story, but I just want to sort of reiterate something that the thing that I think the message that I'm getting in this first piece is you said, if you take yourself seriously, whatever you are, you take yourself seriously as a business person, you take yourself seriously as an entrepreneur, you take yourself seriously as a side hustler, you take yourself seriously as a professional, you need to be investing in your personal brand. And part of your personal brand investment is investing in these visual assets, because that's how people are getting to know you, understand you, take you seriously through how you present yourself visually in the day and age that we are in. So hopefully everyone's got that message. It's like if you're in the whatever your status, if you've decided that you take yourself seriously, then this is something to be looking at and investing in. And that's just sort of like should be the end of the discussion. And it's like, okay, folks, we're on board. Let's keep going. So tell us more about how you came to this and sort of like what's your story. You talked about starting photography while you were in a job and then saving up, it was your side hustle before coming full time. So tell us a little bit more about that and your journey.
So I love my journey and I love this story because it makes so much sense. So I have had a camera by my side pretty much my whole life. I used to do setups in the basement and have my sister and friends come when I was like 10, 12 and was trying to do lighting setups then. I spent all of high school in the dark room, editor of the yearbook, and did it then. During college, I kind of let it go. I remember selling my camera on the street in Boston after I graduated from college. I can't even believe I did that, but I just kind of went away from it for a while. And that is when I got into finance and after college and started working for a bank and then a hedge fund, just multiple finance jobs. Around the time that I was pregnant with my first child, who is now 13, I all of a sudden had the desire again to take up photography. And I really didn't want to go to a 9-to-5 job every day and have him with a nanny or a daycare. So I thought, okay, well, I'll start a photography business, and that will enable me to be home with him. It didn't work out that way, but I did start the photography business, and I bought a camera, had a website, and just started sessions so I started a family photography business at that point. So that was 13 years ago, 13, 14 years ago. And I stayed at my corporate job. So I would go to work more than 9 to 5, and then come home at night, be with him, put him to bed, and then work while he napped. I was just constantly working. And I was lucky enough that every single year that business grew and grew. And so by the time I had my third child, who is 6 now, I basically had 2 completely full-time jobs. I really was done with the corporate finance job. And I learned through many different ways, one of them was Brene Brown, who I love, that as you get older, your need for creativity grows. And if you have it in you, I think she says unused creativity metastasizes. You have more and more of a desire to do what your God-given traits, or what you were innately made to do. And I just felt more and more that this was my calling, not sitting behind a desk all day and doing, I mean, there are 2 completely different things, right? One is like so creative and one is financial. But I have always had this huge passion and interest in entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial endeavors. So I've always really studied business people and companies and why they've worked and why they haven't worked. And I've always been interested in financially how they work. I just don't want to be the one necessarily, behind a desk analyzing it. I want to kind of analyze it myself in a more creative way, I guess. So throughout this whole time, it was kind of, what else can I do other than photograph families? Should I do weddings? How can I make more money? How can I make it so that I'm covering what I was doing in my day job? And I knew I didn't want to do weddings. I didn't really have an answer, but at that point, when I had my third child, I was pretty much making enough so that I could stop the day job, because of the expense of childcare is so great. So I knew that like it would not equal out. So I took the leap. And again, I had saved most of what I had made, or a significant portion of what I had made in the side hustle. So I had a little bit of a chunk there.
And how many years of the side hustle was this at this point?
5 or 6 years, probably. And every year, I don't think maybe it doubled. I mean, it's still growing every year. I'm so blessed and lucky. And I was at a point where I couldn't do both anymore. I had 3 kids, and it was impossible to do both. So I had to make a decision. And I made the decision to leave my 9 to 5. And amazingly enough, right after I made that decision, I think it might have been a week, a month at most, personal brand photography was like just laid out in front of me. And I was like, it was like the heavens were singing. It literally was. I mean, I still get chills when I think about it. It was, I don't know why, it was something that I had never thought of, or I think, it's kind of a relatively new phenomena, because there used to be just commercial photography and what else, like commercial photography, that was really it. But with like the dawn of more entrepreneurs and social media, there was more of a growth of personal brands and need for different types of photography. So anyway, this fell into my lap, and I felt like I had found my calling, because it married the 2 things that I love the most: my skill for photography, which I'd already established, and I had already established, again, a personal brand as a photographer. And then I kind of had an established personal brand as someone who worked in business. And like I said before, I had this love and passion and fascination with entrepreneurs. So working in personal brand or brand photography has enabled me to both photograph entrepreneurs and then get to know them and work with them and learn about them and learn their stories and help them communicate their stories through visuals. And it just has been one of the greatest joys of my life and feels like the perfect thing for me. And it allowed me to expand my business at a time when I needed to. So I have kept doing both families and brands. So it's really filled that when I left working in the corporate world, it still enabled me to be able to have it's fulfilled that business need that I have that wasn't necessarily filled by working for a corporation, because it's always been this entrepreneurial need for stories and growth and strategy and figuring things out. That was really my desire.
Yeah, what I like about your story is that it shows that nothing is wasted, right? So like you've gone through this journey, you've gone through this experience, you've done a number of different things, and it's taken time to sort of figure out how all these things fit together, and they all fit together in you, which is something that my friend Savita always says when I'm trying to figure out how do all these things make sense. She's like, they make sense because they're all things, they fit together in you. Like, stop trying to figure it out. But it took you a while to just sort of really get to the center of it, and you did it over time. And I like that. I like your journey is not just like, oh yeah, I woke up one day and I quit my job and I just sort of like went out, and it's, that's like the fantasy. That's not what people have to do. But you just, where you were, found ways to express more and more the creating outlet. You were doing the thing and figured out how to make money from it. And then it just continued to grow and grow and grow over time. And that's why I wanted to know how long it took, just so it really shows this is not an overnight thing. It doesn't have to be an overnight thing, but you do need to start and invest, and then getting to a point where you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna take the leap. I'm gonna move on and take the next step. But you'd built the bridge, you'd built your way to the journey. And I like that, even though you say, yeah, I didn't like the finance, I don't want to do like the business, it's still part of you. It's just the form. So that's something for us to think about when we're in our corporate work or whatever job or whatever thing you're in right now that you find yourself in. It's not necessarily something you have to jettison, or that's going to be, you're going to find out, oh, it's all wasted, it was a loss. But maybe it's just the form that it's in. Maybe it's just the context that it's in that's just not quite a fit. And you need to change context. It needs to change in some sort of way, and it'll still come with you, but in the way that's a better fit for you going forward.
Bullseye. I mean, that's exactly amazing. And I think that should serve as inspirational to people, because nothing, like you said, nothing is wasted. Our society we want success quickly. We want everything quickly. We want it overnight. Look, I wasn't happy. I wanted it right then, right now, but you do have to be patient and really examine what it is that lights you up and makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. And then how can you use that to create a life or a business? And like you said, maybe it's part of this and part of that. And we live in a day and age when we are lucky enough that you can kind of create something yourself, like taking bits and pieces of what you're good at or what you like from a corporate job. And there are so many benefits to having a side hustle. And also, like, financially, I talked about how I saved, but also I used the money that I was earning to buy my equipment, and I didn't put myself into debt over doing that, right? I think really taking time to figure it out instead of just quitting one day, that's just going to put kind of undue pressure on yourself. Let yourself not feel the pressure and let it evolve. And once you are making money from it, it doesn't have to completely match. But once you have tested your idea and know that your idea works, then, quit your 9 to 5 if that's what you want to do. I think that some people want it to have both, want it just to be a side hustle, right? Which is also fine and wonderful to have that outlet, to have both. But if your ultimate goal is to just be an entrepreneur, test the idea first and make sure that it works. And like my story, there are many iterations of businesses, and that's the benefit of having a brand, because you can have many different iterations of a successful business, but let yourself have a few iterations before you fully commit.
I think it gives your job another job. It gives your job the job of being your first investor, of being your sponsor. It gives your job the job of, not just, paying the bills. For some people, the job is just for paying the bills. For other people, job is like the source of fulfillment and all these different things, which, I poo-poo that. I'm like, your job is here. I think your job is here to support your God-given traits and what you're here to create. And maybe the job will be the space for it for a time, but regardless, you need to be creating something of your own on the side. So I love that you used your job as and what you made from your side hustle and with allowing your job to support the other things as what you were using to invest. And maybe your bonus and maybe some other things that you're doing and making on the job. Maybe you set aside money every month in addition to your savings, in addition to vacation time. You have your creating fund, like the thing that how you're going to invest in your own brand and something that you're building for the future. So starting to think about other ways in which your job can be supporting your life as opposed to the other way around. So I love all aspects and pieces of your journey and all that you learned from it, and how we can start now, build, be patient over time, evolve, see what things come up with, experiment, and take advantage of that safety net that you have now to expand and explore.
Really, having a personal brand leads to freedom. So it's how you say reframe, which I love. The freedom to reframe, the freedom to pivot, like we saw a lot of people doing in COVID, and when people do when they become parents. The freedom to parent, the freedom to move. There's so much freedom that comes from really establishing yourself as a brand. And I think that that's so important. Being a mom, I've seen the immense importance of having that freedom and being a very passionate entrepreneur who loves what she does and wants to work all the time, but then having that freedom to be there in whatever capacity I need for my kids or otherwise.
So what might this look like for a professional? Someone who maybe is thinking about starting a side hustle, maybe doesn't have one yet. Someone who's in the job, maybe they have products, services they work on, or maybe they work on projects. How does this person go about using visual assets as part of their personal brand?
So I think, first of all, figuring out what it is that you're passionate about. And I think there's so much pressure right now for young people to invest in their passion. And I think sometimes that's difficult because people don't know what their passion is. But really to figure that out and figure out how it is that you are passionate about to make money on the side. So what your side hustle is. If we already know what the side hustle is, then what I do to help people figure out the visual assets that we are going to create that will benefit them is go through very in-depth Q&A with them to figure out kind of their past, present, and future. So I understand, like I just went through my story with you, I understand how they got to where they are currently in their brand, their side hustle, their business, their product, and then what they hope the future is of it, who their client is, who they're talking to, who they want to be talking to. Is their product reaching their target client at this point, or are they not? And so from there, then we will create story-based imagery. So story-based imagery, because story is really what draws people in, right? And really builds a know, like, and trust factor with your viewership. So really using the person's story and the story of whether it's a product that they're selling, education that they're selling, a lifestyle that they're selling. So show what your audience consumer will get from working with you or buying your product. So really showing kind of like a before after visual. I'm not sure if that totally answered your question.
I can imagine a teacher, right, in the classroom sharing, privacy concerns aside, they wouldn't post photos of the kids, but let's say it's the start of the year and they show their classroom before they set up their bulletin board and then a photo of it afterwards and just sort of say, it's going to be a great year, and just sort of show through their Instagram or show through their LinkedIn. This is before and after, you said, story-based image of something that they're planning on doing. Maybe it's like we're going to learn about the planets and use that to showcase their creativity or their skill as a teacher, and that be part of their visual brand because it's a photo that they've shared or maybe even a short video clip, and that lives on their LinkedIn. And so when they're looking for a new role, or they want to be known as a certain type of teacher, they've been putting that out there. That's become part of their brand and is them doing that work, and that becomes sort of like their visual asset. Does that sort of fit into that before and after story-based imagery, story-based storytelling, or however you described it that you're talking about? Would that be something like that?
I think that's a perfect example of that because it's a use of both current and future, like your past, present, and future. I think that that's a very, very good example. I had an amazing client who was a marketing executive at major brands and became a mom and was like, okay, here's what we're lacking. I am working in the corporate world. So this was her side hustle too at first. And I don't have time to go to Target and get all the stuff to create a perfect Halloween for my children. I'm running around, I'm at the office or I'm picking them up from school, but I want them to enjoy each holiday. And so she had this idea to create a box that was sent. It's a subscription-based business, and a box is sent each holiday to your house. And it has both like a craft that you can do with your children, but then also just decorations and kind of like everything to make it easy for a mom to have a wonderful holiday season with the children. So her past was doing marketing for huge corporations. So she had expertise in how to market and how to do product-based. And then she created this box and it's gone gangbusters, and she quit her other job. And so what we did was create stories around each box and how the mom felt, how the children felt, the connection between home, mother, child. Obviously, what's in the box, because that's kind of practical, but you have it from the visual assets from many different standpoints to really show the feeling that is created from purchasing this product.
I think that's such an important aspect of what our brands are. It's like how we make people feel. What's the feeling that people get from the things that we create, whether it's a product, a service, an experience, whether it's how people are always left feeling when they go through something that you put on or use or experience anything that you have. And that's an important focal point for what are you capturing with your images, or what are you communicating and articulating as your brand. It's just sort of saying, anytime people interact with me, this is the way that I leave people feeling, and that's my brand. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think that helps. I think sometimes people struggle with like, okay, well, what am I focusing on? What am I taking a picture of? What am I trying to articulate? What am I trying to show forth? It's like you're trying to show the lasting impact, the feeling that you leave people with.
Just to build on that, because I think that it's very important. I talk to my clients a lot about this, and I think this is. I'm such a fan of social media because I do believe that there are positives in connection and free advertising and marketing for businesses. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing in a lot of respects. And I really believe that this imagery and how we set ourselves up as entrepreneurs, we should be aspirational, but not unattainable. So everything should be inspirational and aspirational and attainable. It shouldn't show a life that someone's going to say, oh, I'm never going to be able to do that. It should be, oh yeah, I can do that too, which I think is kind of building on what you were saying.
It's opening people up to a possibility.
Exactly.
And a possibility that they're like, yeah, this, not a sense of, oh, it's so far away, as you're saying, but it's like, oh, this is possible. I hadn't thought about this being something, it's like bringing the far closer, bringing what's far away near, up close and personal, so people can feel it, taste it, touch it in a way in their imagination and get a sense of like, oh yeah, this could be a reality for me as well.
Exactly. And so using story to really do that draws people in and gets people invested in you and your story, and they want to understand why, how. Also, the imagery should differentiate you. It shouldn't be just the same working at a computer or drinking coffee or whatever. It should tell the story of who you are. And yes, I love coffee. It's one of my first loves. So that would be part of my story, but it should really be able to express who you are and differentiate who you are. And again, show what it would be like to work with you. You're not like everybody else. So it should show a difference.
What is I think you call them a visual brand strategy, because that's something that I believe you work with people on and think that everyone should have. What does that look like for an individual? What's that?
As we talked about, one of the benefits of having a personal brand is to be able to expand and pivot. And I am constantly trying to figure out what my clients need and bringing up new products or packages, I just commented on my love for social media. And so a few years ago, I was like, I think I need to expand into social media management. And I did it for a little while and it did not fit with my lifestyle, and it really wasn't for me. But this is another good example of testing things out because I was so curious about it. I thought, well, this is a great other revenue source and it makes sense. But it didn't work for me. But I'm glad I tested it out so I knew. And so I put that aside for like 2 years, 3 years. Then last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I'm so bad with times, there was like a light bulb that went off because one of my clients said to me, I have all these amazing images and now I'm just overwhelmed with what to do with them. And this is coming from someone who has had an extremely successful personal brand for years and years and years as an author and has a huge following. So I realized that what a lot of people really need is a strategy around using the images because they just freeze. And what I didn't love about social media management was I didn't really like the fact that I was writing a caption or I was writing something for a client. I really think it should be you and your voice. So a colleague and I kind of launched this idea and this product into the world with rave reviews. We're still working on it's evolving too, because we're seeing all the things we can do with it. But I do think the future is more strategic consulting and not necessarily complete outsourcing, because what we have done is someone will hire us and we will do a deep dive on their brand, their current visual brand. So where they're showing up, how they're showing up. And we have found that a lot of times someone will say to us, okay, so my goal right now is to grow X and put my product in stores. But yet on their social media, they're showing something completely different. And so we'll say, well, wait, if your goal is to grow in this way, why are you not talking or showing that at all? So having that outside perspective from someone else, I know for me, that's huge. That has been very, very helpful in business. And so my colleague and I love talking strategy. And so it kind of is like this amazing way of helping people really strategically figure out how to use the imagery they have, first of all, whether it's from us or another photographer.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. So I like that. So it's like you can help people who already have a whole bunch of photos, whether it's photos they took or they work with another photographer and they just don't know what to do with it. And you help them develop the strategy around it or work with them to get new. And your photos are amazing, as everyone who goes to my website. Claire did my photos, y'all.
You're not a good candidate because you do use them and you use them well. You're like my best case study.
You're absolutely fantastic photographer. It's it's very easy to use those photos. But yeah, so it's either like you have your own photos, you need a strategy for it, or you need a photographer to help you take the great photos and also have a strategy for it. There is help. There's help out there. And if they're what we said at the beginning, if they're serious about their work, they're serious professionals, this is something that they're going to invest in and want to do. And there's help to do it, not just with the photos, but actually having a strategy to create and put out that story.
Exactly. And if you haven't invested in the images, just as well. I mean, we'll talk through that and say, or even if you do have images, sometimes it's talking through and saying, okay, you're missing this piece or you're missing that piece. And, you could do this yourself. Let us show you how you could create this video or how you could do this yourself. And then next time you have a photo shoot, whether again, it's with us or someone else, here's what you need to focus on. And so we do give them help with captions, and we do give them everything kind of that maybe a social media manager would give, on top of empowering them to do it themselves. Because we're not doing the posting necessarily. So that isn't, I kind of misspoke. We're not doing everything that a social media manager would do, because we're not doing the posting for them, but we are strategically empowering them to correctly communicate their goals and their stories with their audience.
Yeah, the idea that there needs to be intentionality and commitment to doing this is coming through clearly. That this is just not something to, be ad hoc about, or just, maybe I'll just, faff around and stumble on it, but to really take the time and invest money, invest time, invest in the professionals who can help and support you on this, so that you can develop a brand that is going to support you and work for you. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want your brand to be going to work for you, to be attracting more opportunities, whether it's making it easier to get another job, making it easier to pivot into another arena, making it easier to get clients if you have a side hustle or business or whatever it is. But this is an area and an aspect to invest in. And if businesses do this for themselves, and you are in the business of yourself, whether or not you have a business or not, as a CEO of your career or whatever, then this is something to do. This is something to really think about, be intentional about, and to dive deeper into, and work with folks like Claire, work with folks like you, and I 100%, support that, because I've seen the benefit and value of that even for myself. I want to ask, what do people get wrong about all of this that's sort of getting them off the rails with this?
It can be fun. This doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be serious. Because I truly believe that we should be working our passion and, like you said, our God-given talents, it should come naturally in a lot of respects, and it can be fun. It doesn't have to be daunting. It doesn't have to be serious. It doesn't have to be a scary investment. It doesn't have to be something that is completely overwhelming all the time. First of all, again, like you said, there's help there. And I really do. Another benefit of having the money and having a side hustle, I really believe in hiring mentors. I've been in like 4 or 5 masterminds. You ask for help and look at what other people have done. Go onto social media. This is one of the practices that I believe is really, really beneficial. This is going off a little bit, but go on, figure out what you feel when you're looking at certain people and brands. Are you having a positive or negative reaction? And if you're having a positive reaction, why? If you're having a negative reaction, why? Use that to inform yourself what it is that, if there's a positive reaction, right? Okay, what is that? And can I use what they're doing that makes me drawn to them in my brand? Use that to the benefit. And if they're doing something that you don't resonate with, it doesn't mean you don't like the person. It doesn't mean you don't like the brand. You just aren't attracted to that. Use that. Why? Why? There's some people I am much more attracted to than others, and I figured out why. And I communicated that very clearly to one of the women that was mentoring me. And that felt so freeing. It was very, very, that I figured that out. So anyway, I think one of the things is really having fun with it and realizing that it doesn't need to be scary, asking for help, hiring people to help you. When it really comes down to spending money on visuals, whether it's family, entrepreneurs, whatever it is, there is oftentimes hesitation with paying for it. But if you actually look at how much you're paying for it and what you're getting back, it's just unquantifiable. I mean, you would look at the price and you're like, well, I can't even believe. I mean, you and I, how long ago did we work together? How many years ago?
This was 2021, I think.
And you're still using the images.
Still using those images. And it was so much fun.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
day was so much fun. Speaking of fun. I had so much fun because you Claire is hilarious. Claire would do this stuff where she's like, all right, Joy, now I need you to smile really big. And then she'd go, ha, 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 we're laughing, we're having a good time. And I was just cracking up because I was like, what is that hilarious laugh that you're doing? So it was absolutely fun. And having the help was big. It was huge. And all your points, like, that one-time investment is yielding so much dividends. I haven't even used half the photos yet.
And you use them a lot. And you are an example of using them and putting them to work. And I'm so glad you said that, because that was my other point that when I went on my tangent, forgot about, is that I mainly work with women. There is, I would say, the younger generation, the 20-somethings. This is not a hesitation they have. But most of my clients are around our age, and we didn't grow up with phones in our hands like they do. And it's not people's favorite things to do, get in front of a camera, majority of people. And so I try to explain how it's not scary and how I work, and that it's basically conversational. Like, I'll just talk to you about your business and we'll go about doing what we do. And then we'll kind of stop and take a picture. And it doesn't need to be this stiff, scary situation. It can be a very natural, easy, and fun experience that then yields you major benefits in the end.
And the quality is so important when you're doing this type of work. It makes such a huge difference. I went to a wedding recently of a friend's sister, and they had they were like, don't take your own photos. We have a photographer, and the photographers were there with their legit cameras. And when the photos, oh my goodness. And my phone was dying, because my phone's always dying. So my phone was off anyway, the whole wedding. And, and I was going to follow instructions, but there was no way I was going to take a photo, or anyone. I bet you nobody at that wedding took a photo anywhere near any of the photos these photographers took. And it's just sort of like, let the professionals do their job, and you will love the photos, and you'll use them. They just last in a certain way, and they convey this. They have the power and the impact to convey the story, to communicate the feelings, to communicate the emotions over such a long period of time. So invest, in getting the help that you need, getting those quality photos, those quality visual assets, thinking about your story, thinking about your brand, and having that put out there. And it's just going to support your next transitions, support your pivot, support putting your brand on the map, whatever it is that you need going forward. There's nothing like it. So I hope folks who are serious about creating now and continuing to create in the future will really look into this aspect of their personal brand. It's not just, about what you talk as your brand, but how you show your brand, the visual of it.
I love the idea of it supporting you. I love that.
One last thing to our professionals, our brand people out there who are thinking about it, hesitating on the fence. What do you want to tell them?
You can do it. Don't let fear stand in the way. Do not let other people's opinions stand in the way. If you need to, the best thing that someone ever told me is, your social media is not for your friends and your family. If it's a business account, don't let them tell you can't do it. Don't let anyone tell you can't do it. Do it.
You hear that, my creating maven? Just do it. See why I had Claire come on? What an inspiration and what an inspiring story about her journey from financial corporate America to her photography business. And she spent years building it as a side hustle. Remember that. She spent years doing this. I took away so much from this conversation, but the main things were these. If you're taking yourself seriously, whether it's seriously about your side hustle, your business, or just your profession, if you're taking it seriously, it's time to get serious also about having visual assets that are images that tell the story of your brand. And even though it's time to invest in this part of your brand, you don't have to be afraid. There's help and support out there from amazing photographers like Claire who can help you with the photos, or if you already have photos, she can help you with your visual brand strategy. This investment and what it yields won't happen overnight. It's a slow build to turning your side hustle into something that can support you completely. And you don't have to do it if you don't want to either, right? So my guest, EJ from episode 42, showed us that you can have a side hustle that creates more freedom and that always remains a side hustle while you keep a 9-to-5. It's up to you what you do with it. Investing in your personal brand, especially images that will help you to tell your story, is going to help strengthen your brand overall and give you the freedom that you need to make the pivots that you want in your future. So that even if you don't have a side hustle, if you're a professional in a role in an organization, you still need to be working on this, investing in this and building on it because it has so much to offer you and so much freedom and flexibility. Now is the time, my creating maven. Now is the time. If you want to learn more about Claire and how you can work with her, then visit her at yourbrandphotographer.com or claireharveyphotography.com. She's also on LinkedIn, and I'll share her details in the show notes. I hope you're feeling good and revved up about all of this after this conversation, but you might still have some questions on where to start. And that question might have you feeling stuck, especially if you're sort of saying to yourself, I don't even know what my thing is, talk less of trying to figure out how to get visual assets for that thing. Well, never fear. I've helped others like you figure out your own unique thing, your own unique contribution, and I do it through what's called a resume excavation. Together, we pinpoint not just your strengths and accomplishments, but that specific thing that you uniquely create and which we can use to better position you on LinkedIn or any other platform so that your next opportunity sees you versus you looking for your opportunity. If you listen to episode 4, I take a client through this resume excavation, and I'd love to do that for you as well to help you get clear and confident about your personal brand so that you can put all the things that Diane Diaz shared in episode 64 and what Claire shared in today's episode into practice. Visit reframetocreate.com/resume-excavation to schedule your session. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?